Hello, snuggly friend. Tonight's story is about a teddy bear, quiet and still during the day, but who, once the child falls asleep, wakes up inside their dreams. Tucked in beside a small child named Rosie was a teddy bear named Toby. He didn't talk, he didn't move, at least not while Rosie was awake. But the moment Rosie drifted off to sleep, Toby's stitched eyes twinkled, and he woke up inside her dream. There, Toby was bigger than before, as soft as ever, and full of life. He waited for Rosie each night in the land of quiet stars, a calm, glowing world where trees whispered lullabies and paths were made of clouds. Together, they would ride on the backs of dream turtles, slide down rainbows that hummed with music, and drink warm cups of moonberry tea under glowing lanterns. Toby never rushed her. He always held her hand. And when her dream felt too full or fast, he'd gently say, "Let's slow down." Sometimes, Rosie would dream of being unsure or scared. That's when Toby became even softer, warmer, and braver, wrapping his fuzzy arms around her and making everything feel okay. He remembered every dream, even the ones Rosie forgot when she woke up. And as the sun began to rise and Rosie stirred in bed, Toby would quietly curl back up beside her, going still once more. Just a teddy, just a toy. But inside, he was smiling because he knew tonight we'll dream again. So tonight, when you hug your favorite toy, maybe they'll wake up inside your dreams too. And if they do, don't worry. They already know the way. Good night. Hello, little listener. Tonight's story is about a tiny cloud, soft and shy, who floated high above the world, but didn't want to rain because it loved watching the dreams below. High up in the sky, far above the rooftops and trees, floated a cloud named Nilo. Nilo was the smallest cloud in the sky, puffy and white, like a scoop of sleepy whipped cream. All the other clouds had jobs. Some made shade, some brought snow, and others, the big grey ones, rumbled with thunder and let the rain fall. But Nilo didn't want to rain, not even a drop. When the wind asked why, Nilo said, "I don't want to wake the dreamers below. I like watching them sleep." Because each night, as the stars came out and the towns grew still, Nilo would float low and gentle, peeking through windows and garden trees. He'd see children curled up under blankets, stuffed animals tucked under arms, eyes fluttering as dreams began to bloom. Sometimes he saw giggles in their sleep, other times soft sighs. Once, a little boy whispered, "Hello, cloud," and Nilo felt his heart grow fluffy with joy. The other clouds didn't understand. "Rain is important," they said. "It helps flowers grow." But Nilo believed dreams help little hearts grow too. So instead of raining, Nilo learned to do something else. He gently drizzled dream mist. Not wet, not cold, just a touch of sparkle in the air to make dreams sweeter. It felt like a kiss from the sky. And soon, the flowers still grew. The dreams grew too. And the other clouds began to smile at Nilo when they passed. They didn't try to change him anymore. Because sometimes, being soft is the strongest thing you can be. Tonight, if your window feels a little cooler, a little softer, maybe Nilo is floating by, watching over your dream and wishing you good night.
Hello, Starry Snuggler. Tonight's story is about a pair of pajamas that didn't just keep a child warm. They lit up gently in the dark and carried them into the softest dreams. In a little dresser folded neatly between cozy shirts and socks lay a pair of very special pajamas. They looked like ordinary sleepwear, dark blue with tiny silver dots. But when the lights turned off and the room grew still, something magical happened. The silver dots began to sparkle. Not like glitter, not like fireflies, but soft, slow flickers like stars sighing in the dark. A child named Juna discovered them one chilly evening. She pulled them on and they felt just right, warm at the toes, soft at the collar, and light as a whisper. As she lay down, her covers tucked around her, the pajamas began to shimmer. And then the stars on her pajamas slowly lifted, floating like glowing dust. Juna felt her body relax, and suddenly she was drifting. The pajamas weren't just clothes, they were a ship, a starship. She sailed through skies made of velvet, past sleepy clouds and blinking planets. Comets waved hello, and shooting stars twirled in slow, dreamy circles. Her ship made no sound, only a faint hum, like a lullaby wrapped in moonlight. Juna didn't steer. The pajamas knew the way. They carried her to places no one else had ever dreamed, gardens of quiet giggles, lakes of shimmering light, and floating beds of cloud-soft pillows. And when her dream was done, the pajamas gently brought her back to bed, just in time for the morning light to peek through the window. The sparkles faded, but Juna always woke up with the feeling that something magical had happened. And each night, when she put on her starry pajamas, she smiled, ready to fly again. Tonight, when you slip into bed, imagine your pajamas glowing quietly, ready to carry you somewhere beautiful. Good night.
Hello, little dream walker. Tonight's story is about a path that didn't lead through forests or over hills, but through dreams made of soft silver light, where every step glowed beneath your feet. In a town where lanterns dimmed one by one as bedtime came, a girl named Mira loved to take little walks in her dreams. She didn't run. She didn't fly. She simply walked, slowly and gently. But what made her walks special were the footsteps. Each time she took a step in her dream, a soft moonlit print would appear beneath her. Not heavy or loud, just a quiet shimmer, a glowing oval that faded gently behind her as she moved forward. The ground didn't matter, whether she walked through gardens of pillows, over floating bridges made of yarn, or across lakes that rippled like silver silk. Her footsteps always left a trail of light. One night, Mira noticed something curious. When she looked back, someone else was following her path. Not to chase, not to scare, just to follow. Quietly, comfortably. It was a small boy, maybe a little younger than her, with big eyes and a gentle smile. "I saw your footprints," he said. "They made me feel safe." Mira smiled. "Then walk with me," she said. From that night on, others began to follow too. Sleepy children with blinking eyes and yawns in their voices, all walking together gently on a path lit not by lamps or stars, but by moonlight footsteps made by dreams. No one rushed, no one led. They just walked, slowly, through a dreamscape that welcomed them like a lullaby. And when it was time to rest, the footsteps led each of them back to their own beds, where their blankets waited and pillows good night. Tonight, as you fall asleep, imagine each breath as a step, each heartbeat a soft glow beneath you, and let your dreams show you the way. Good night. Hello, warm dreamer. Tonight's story is about a blanket, soft, quiet, and gentle, that had a secret. It remembered every dream ever wrapped beneath it. In a small room with a nightlight shaped like the moon, there lay a blanket. It looked like any other, warm, fluffy, and stitched with little stars along the edges. But this blanket, called Mira, was more than just cozy. It was a dream keeper. Every night, when a child named Theo snuggled underneath Mira, the blanket would listen, not to sounds, but to dreams. It didn't judge or change them. It simply kept them safe. Some nights, Theo dreamed of riding a cloud shaped like a turtle. Other times, he floated inside a bubble through a world of upside-down trees. Once, he dreamed of a library made entirely of jelly, and Mira remembered it all. When Theo was scared or worried, Mira wrapped him tighter, tucking the softest part around his shoulders. And when his dreams turned bright and colorful, Mira hummed with warmth, glowing faintly like a candle under the covers. What Theo didn't know was that every stitch in Mira held a dream, each tiny thread glowing softly with the memory of laughter, wonder, and even the peaceful quiet between dreams. One night, Theo whispered sleepily, "I wonder if dreams disappear." Mira, though she couldn't speak, held him gently because she knew the truth. Dreams don't vanish. They live on, in the quiet, in the warmth, and in blankets that remember. And as Theo drifted into another night's journey, Mira added one more memory to her thread, a dream of starlit rivers, and singing pillows, and a hug that never ended. Tonight, when you pull your blanket up to your chin, know that it's not just keeping you warm. It's holding your dreams one by one, like treasures stitched into time. Good night. Hello, little one. Tonight's story is about a cradle. Not pushed by hands or moved by feet, but gently rocked by the soft night wind. Just enough to carry a child into the deepest, sweetest dreams. In a cottage at the edge of a meadow, where the flowers whispered and the stars blinked low, stood an old wooden cradle by a window. It was simple. No wheels, no buttons, no sound, just curved wood, worn smooth from years of love. The cradle belonged to baby Eli. Each evening, when the sky turned purple and the crickets began their quiet songs, his mother would lay him inside with a soft blanket and a kiss. And then she would open the window. That's when the wind would come. Not a strong wind, not a cold wind, a cradle wind, gentle, warm, and just curious enough to play. It would slip through the window like a sigh, curl beneath the cradle, and begin to rock. Back and forth, back and forth. It made no noise. It didn't hurry. But with every soft push, baby Eli's eyelids would grow heavier. Sometimes the wind carried smells from the meadow, lavender, mint, and soft grass. Other times it whispered stories, not with words, but with rhythm. Stories of floating leaves, sleepy bees, and stars who hummed lullabies. Eli never cried in that cradle, not when the wind was there. And when his breath grew deep, the cradle rocked slower, slower, until it stopped. The wind would lift gently, slip back through the window, and leave the room still and sweet with peace. Each night the same, and every time the dreams came softer, deeper, longer. Tonight, if your window is open and the curtains move just a little, maybe the wind is saying, "It's time to rest, little one. I'll rock you into sleep. Good night." Hello again, peaceful heart. Tonight's story is about a tiny bell, so quiet that it could only be heard when your eyes were closed and your dreams had begun. In a little village at the edge of a misty forest, there stood a bell tower. But this bell wasn't like any other. It didn't ring in the morning. It didn't toll at noon. It didn't sound for weddings or storms. This bell only rang in dreams. No one had ever seen it move, not even the birds that nested near its silver edges. But every so often, a child would wake up and say, "I heard a soft bell last night, and I had the most beautiful dream." The bell's name was Lumi. She was small and smooth, and sat very still. But she listened carefully to the world below. Lumi waited each night for silence, for the moment when the village grew still, when lights dimmed and thoughts softened. That's when she'd hum, Not a loud ring, just a gentle ding, like a breath turned into sound. And in that moment, dreams would begin. One night, a boy named Emil whispered a wish as he closed his eyes. "I hope I fly tonight." Lumi heard him. She gave a tiny ring, soft as moonlight, and in Emil's dream, wings grew from his shoulders. He soared over fields of starlight, glided over sleepy rivers, and floated above clouds that sang lullabies. Another night, a girl named Mara wished for a quiet place to rest. Lumi chimed again, just once, and Mara dreamed of a valley filled with glowing flowers and slow, sleepy winds that carried her gently across the grass. Lumi never rang twice in the same dream. Once was enough, because her sound didn't wake you. It wrapped around your dream like a ribbon. And no matter where the dream took you, that soft chime stayed with you, keeping you safe and calm. When morning came, the bell sat silently, just like before, still, quiet, waiting for the next dreamer. Close your eyes now, little one. Maybe, just maybe, you'll hear the quiet bell tonight. And if you do, follow where it leads. Good night. Hello, tiny traveler. Tonight's story is about a pair of magical mittens, not for keeping warm from the cold, but for catching beams of moonlight and turning them into dreams. In a quiet town where the rooftops sparkled with frost and stars, lived a boy named Arlo. One chilly evening, as he got ready for bed, his grandmother handed him a pair of mittens. They were silver and soft, almost glowing under the lamplight. "These," she said with a wink, "are moonlight mittens. Only wear them when you're ready to dream." Arlo smiled, but didn't quite understand. That night, as the moon rose full and bright, he slipped the mittens on. They felt cool at first, like snow that didn't melt, and then suddenly, warm! The tips of his fingers tingled. He held his hands up toward the window, where the moonlight poured in like gentle silver rain. And when the light touched the mittens, something wonderful happened. It stuck! The moonlight clung to the mittens like threads of glowing yarn, wrapping around his fingers, sparkling and soft. Arlo closed his eyes and began to float. Not in his body, but in his dreams. With the mittens guiding him, he glided across glowing fields of night flowers that bloomed in silence. He climbed silver ladders that reached up into the stars. He waved to owls that carried soft lanterns, and high above him, moon whales swam through the sky, their tails leaving trails of lullaby dust. The mittens never let go. They kept him warm. They lit his way. They turned every quiet corner of the dream world into something safe and full of wonder. By morning, Arlo woke up smiling. The mittens lay folded beside his pillow, no longer glowing, but somehow still special. From that day on, each night when the moon appeared, Arlo reached for his moonlight mittens and let them carry him gently into sleep. Tonight, if the moonlight touches your room, pretend you have mittens made of silver and stars. Let them guide you into the softest dreams. Good night.
Hello, little listener. Tonight's story is about the moon, not just shining above us, but listening every night for its very favorite lullaby. Every night, the moon rose quietly into the sky. It didn't make a sound. It simply watched the world grow sleepy, windows dimming, stars blinking on, trees whispering to the wind. But there was something the moon loved more than anything: lullabies. Not loud ones, not fancy ones, just the soft hums that parents sang, the little tunes whispered into tiny ears, the melodies that floated gently up into the sky. The moon listened closely. It had favorites, of course, like the one a mother sang to her baby in a rocking chair by the window, or the soft hum of a father brushing back a child's hair as they closed their eyes. But one night, the moon heard something new. It came from a small village where a girl named Ilara sang quietly to her little brother. She didn't know all the words. Her voice was a bit wobbly, but it was real, warm, true. The moon leaned in closer, casting a soft glow through their window. The lullaby floated upward like a feather in the air. Close your eyes, the stars are near. Sleep will find you, have no fear. The moon sighed. It was the kind of song that felt like a blanket. From that night on, the moon returned to Ilara's window every evening, just in time for her lullaby. Sometimes the stars twinkled along with the rhythm. Sometimes the breeze slowed down to listen. Ilara never noticed, but her brother always fell asleep faster. And the moon? It glowed a little brighter each night, because even though it had heard lullabies for thousands of years, that one, simple and soft, became its very favorite. Tonight, if you sing softly, hum gently, or even whisper to the quiet, the moon might be listening. And it just might smile. Good night.
Hello, Cozy Toes. Tonight's story is about a special pair of socks, not just warm and fuzzy, but magical, because once you put them on, they carried you straight into dreamland. In the bottom drawer of a little dresser, under folded pajamas and soft shirts, lay a pair of socks. They weren't flashy, not striped or sparkly, just plain blue with tiny white dots near the heels. Dots that glowed faintly in the dark, like little stars. A child named Eli found them one chilly evening when his feet felt extra wiggly and his thoughts just wouldn't slow down. He pulled them on, right foot first, then left. The socks were warm, but not too warm. Tight, but not too tight. Perfect. As soon as Eli lay back in bed and pulled the covers up to his chin, something wonderful happened. The socks began to tingle, just a little, as if to his toes. Then, ever so gently, they started to move. Not loudly, not quickly, but slowly, like footsteps made of clouds. Eli's feet didn't leave the bed, but in his dreams he was walking. With each breath, the socks carried him through glowing meadows of whispering grass, across pebble paths that giggled softly underfoot, and up hills that sparkled with nighttime flowers. The socks knew the way. They never tripped. They never rushed. they simply led him deeper and deeper into dreamland. There he met gentle creatures who wore scarves made of stardust. He danced on pillows that floated like boats. He tiptoed across bridges made of music. And when the night grew still and quiet, the socks slowed, curled, and stopped beneath a dream tree that hummed the softest lullaby. By morning, the socks had stopped glowing. They were just socks again, cozy and still. But Eli smiled because his feet remembered the places they had been. And every night after that, when the stars appeared, he reached for those socks. So tonight, if your feet feel extra wiggly, find your softest pair of socks. Maybe they'll walk you gently into a dream of your very own. Good night, tick-kick-kick-kick-kick. Hello, gentle dreamer. Tonight's story is about a very special pillow. One that was more than just soft, because inside it bloomed a garden made just for dreams. In a quiet little bedroom, on a small bed near the window, lay a pillow. It was pale blue with tiny white stars stitched into its corners, and it always stayed cool on one side, the perfect kind of pillow for drifting into dreams. But this pillow, unlike any other, had something hidden deep inside its fluff and thread, a secret garden. No one could see it, no one could touch it, but the moment a child laid their head down and closed their eyes, the garden would bloom. The garden inside the pillow didn't have normal flowers or buzzing bees. It had glowing dandelions that floated like wishes, trees that hummed lullabies, and ponds where the water sang softly when the wind blew. It only grew when the sleeper was still, and it changed each night, blooming differently depending on the dreams. For a girl named Amira, the garden grew tall sunflowers that told gentle stories with their petals. For her little brother, Milo, it was filled with soft moss where toy animals came to life and cuddled around him. The pillow garden was never the same twice. Sometimes there were fireflies that giggled when touched. Sometimes the moon dipped low and left a silver path through the trees. And sometimes the child would walk through the garden in their dreams, barefoot and smiling, gathering flowers made of kindness and hope. No loud noises, no chasing, just calm, just wonder. By morning, the garden would quietly fade, folding itself back into the pillow's softness, waiting again for nightfall. The child would wake feeling rested, safe, and somehow happy. Even if they didn't remember the dream, their heart did. And the pillow, always quiet, always still, held their garden safe until the next night. So tonight, when you rest your head, remember this. Inside your pillow, a garden may be waiting. All it needs is your dream to begin. Good night. Hello, sweet dream sailor. Tonight's story is about a very special bed. One that didn't just stay still, but rocked gently like a boat on a quiet sea. In a quiet attic room, under a slanted ceiling and a window full of stars, there lived a small bed made of smooth wood and soft blankets. The bed belonged to a boy named Jonas. It looked ordinary by day, neatly made, pillows fluffed, covers tucked in, but at night, when the stars peeked in and the wind slowed to a hush, the bed would shift just a little. It would sway gently from side to side, like a tiny boat floating on invisible waves. The first time it happened, Jonas thought he was dreaming. He felt the sway, the soft creak of the wooden frame, and the quiet hum of movement. He opened one eye, then the other. The room was still, but his bed was rocking, reassuringly. Not fast, not scary, just slow, like someone was holding it with careful hands. Jonas smiled and pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders. Each night after that, the bed would rock again, and soon it became their bedtime rhythm. As Jonas closed his eyes, the bed would begin to float, up, up, just a little, carried by calm and quiet. Out the window, the stars would blink slowly. Below, the floor would vanish into a soft sea of dreams. The bed never left the room, but in Jonas's mind, it sailed across dream oceans, past glowing islands made of pillows, under skies where whales sang lullabies, through waters filled with sleepy jellyfish and yawning dolphins. And every time the bed rocked, Jonas drifted deeper, safe and warm, like being held by the sea itself. By morning, the bed rested quietly on the floor again, just as before. But Jonas knew the truth. His bed was more than furniture. It was a boat, a cradle, a dream vessel. And each night, it would wait quietly until he was ready to sail again. Close your eyes now, little traveler. Let your bed rock you softly tonight. Not across the room, but across the stars. Good night. Hello, slow and steady dreamer. Tonight's story is about a little snail who wasn't in a hurry, not to eat, not to play, and especially not to dream. In a quiet garden full of sleepy flowers and soft green moss lived a snail named Silo. Silo wasn't the fastest creature in the garden. A little laugh. In fact, he might have been the slowest. While butterflies zipped past and bees buzzed from bloom to bloom, Silo moved gently, thoughtfully, one tiny inch at a time. Reassuring, but that was okay, because Silo knew something special. Dreams come slower when they're sweeter. Each evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the sky turned purple and gold, Silo began his bedtime journey. Not to a nest, not to a cave, but to a small curled leaf under a flower shaped like a bell. It was there he rested his shell, closed his eyes, and let his dreams arrive. Not all at once, but softly, like petals falling. Silo's dreams weren't full of action, reassuring. They were full of calm. He'd dream of glowing mushrooms that hummed lullabies. He'd dream of floating on a bubble through a sky made of velvet. Sometimes he'd dream of sitting perfectly still, while the stars whispered stories above him. Other creatures in the garden sometimes said, "Why don't you dream of adventures, Silo? Or wouldn't you like to fly or race or roar?" But Silo would smile and say, "I like dreams that take their time, that settle in like a soft blanket, that bloom like quiet flowers." And over time, even the buzzing bees and fluttering birds grew curious. They started to sit beside him before bed, to listen, reassuring, to slow down, and little by little, the garden itself began to follow Silo's lead. The wind blew more softly, the flowers yawned before closing, and the stars blinked slower, waiting for Silo's dream to begin. Tonight, don't rush. Let your dreams come gently. Take your time like Silo, and you might find that the quietest dreams are the ones that stay the longest. Good night. Hello, Soft Explorer. Tonight's story is about a closet. Not one full of clothes, but one with a hidden doorway to a land made entirely of pillows. In a quiet bedroom, in the corner near the nightlight, stood a small white closet. To most, it looked ordinary, a place for pajamas, socks, and maybe a toy or two on the bottom shelf. But to a little girl named Lila, it was something more. Because one evening, just before bed, she heard a soft poof coming from inside. She opened the door slowly, and instead of shelves and hangers, she saw pillows! Thousands of them, fluffy, floating, stacked high and deep like clouds in a soft sky. A gentle wind blew through, smelling like warm blankets and sleepy dreams. Leela stepped inside. The ground was made of bouncy cushions. The trees were tall stacks of pillows with feathery leaves, and the sky above shimmered with gentle bedtime colors: lavender, silver, pale blue. She walked through the pillow world barefoot, each step as light as air. No one hurried there, no one shouted. Only soft yawns, slow stretches, and cozy sighs. Leela met creatures made of pillows too. A round owl who blinked slowly and spoke in hums. A cat who purred lullabies, and a sleepy dragon who curled up beside her and offered a wing as a blanket. There were no clocks in Pillow World, no rules, just rest. When Leela grew sleepy, a bed of marshmallowy fluff appeared beneath her. She lay down, hugged the pillow as big as the moon, and closed her eyes inside the dream. And just like that, she was gently back in her own room in her own bed, with her closet door slightly ajar and a single feather on the floor. From that night on, whenever she needed calm or comfort, she'd open the closet slowly and listen. If she heard the poof, she knew the pillow world was waiting. Tonight, before you sleep, take a peek at your closet. Maybe, just maybe, a pillow world is waiting behind it. Good night. Hello again, sleepy friend. Tonight's story is about a pair of tiny shoes that didn't move during the day, but danced, skipped, and wandered far once dreams began. In a quiet corner of a little room sat a pair of soft shoes. They were not shiny. They weren't new. They had no laces, no lights, no squeaks. No squeaks. But they had something special inside them. Dream steps. You see, these shoes had been worn by many children before, and every time they carried a child through dreams, they remembered. They remembered puddles made of stars, clouds that bounced, and playgrounds built in the sky. Now they belonged to a girl named Mira. Each morning, Mira would slip them on and shuffle around the house. They didn't go fast. They didn't make much noise. They were just shoes. But at night, once Mira climbed into bed, closed her eyes, and drifted off, the shoes woke up. Very quietly, they wiggled their soles, stretched their tiny tongues, and tiptoed to the edge of the bed. And then they lifted into the air, one step, then two, and waited for Mira's dream to begin. In her dream, Mira would find herself walking through gardens that glowed in the dark, where butterflies wore pajamas and trees told bedtime jokes. The shoes always knew where to go. Sometimes they led her over dream bridges that swayed gently over lullaby rivers. Sometimes they took her across soft sand that hummed with sleepy melodies. Sometimes they just walked beside her, step by step, while the stars above blinked in rhythm. Mira never tripped, never got lost, because the shoes remembered every dream they had ever visited. And when the dream was done, and morning light kissed the sky, the shoes quietly returned to the corner, still, soft, silent, waiting for the next adventure. So tonight, if your shoes are resting by your bed, thank them gently. They just might be waiting for your dream to begin. Good night. Hello again, sleepy friend. Tonight's story is about a pair of tiny shoes that didn't move during the day, but danced, skipped, and wandered far once dreams began. In a quiet corner of a little room sat a pair of soft shoes. They were not shiny. They weren't new. They had no laces, no lights, no squeaks. But they had something special inside them. Dream steps. You see, these shoes had been worn by many children before, and every time they carried a child through dreams, they remembered. They remembered puddles made of stars, clouds that bounced, and playgrounds built in the sky. Now they belonged to a girl named Mira. Each morning, Mira would slip them on and shuffle around the house. They didn't go fast. They didn't make much noise. They were just shoes. But at night, once Mira climbed into bed, closed her eyes, and drifted off, the shoes woke up. Very quietly, they wiggled their soles, stretched their tiny tongues, and tiptoed to the edge of the bed. And then they lifted into the air, one step, then two, and waited for Mira's dream to begin. In her dream, Mira would find herself walking through gardens that glowed in the dark, where butterflies wore pajamas and trees told bedtime jokes. The shoes always knew where to go. Sometimes they led her over dream bridges that swayed gently over lullaby rivers. Sometimes they took her across soft sand that hummed with sleepy melodies. Sometimes they just walked beside her, step by step, while the stars above blinked in rhythm. Mira never tripped, never got lost, because the shoes remembered every dream they had ever visited. And when the dream was done, and morning light kissed the sky, the shoes quietly returned to the corner, still, soft, silent, waiting for the next adventure. So tonight, if your shoes are resting by your bed, thank them gently. They just might be waiting for your dream to begin. Good night.